what's going on, everybody? Today is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And with us today, we have June, me, Andy, Beth, and I am Brian. And today, we are going to do our best, since it's Wednesday, to bring you all the interesting news over the last 7 days in the world of AI. And there's always something to talk about. I don't think there's ever been a Wednesday where we'd be like, and 3 minutes in, we're like, well, and that's everything. There's always 10 more conversations we want to have, which is why we sort of put in the when we do the 2-week recap shows that we just had last Friday, we do every 2 weeks, is because there's never really enough time to get all this. Also, why we decided to start a newsletter. So if you're interested in signing up for that, you can go to thedailyishow.com and sign up for our newsletter. The point of the newsletter was exactly what I just said, which is that a lot of times we just don't, believe it or not, doing this 5 days a week, we don't always get an opportunity to talk about everything we want to. So it's an opportunity for us to provide more value to our listeners, readers, hit a topic from a different perspective, hit a brand new topic that just didn't make it to a live show, and all the other stuff in between. So if you're interested in that, you can go to thedailyishow.com and sign up for the newsletter. We send them out once a week on Sunday mornings, and this Sunday coming up would be our 5th edition. So we're just getting going with it. Would love your support. And we actually love your feedback more than anything else on that. Okay, so let's dive into the topics of today. Thanks to everybody who's already joining us live. It's always cool to see everybody in the comments. And I don't know, I had one, but I think it's one I think we would all talk about, is there's really been like sort of 2 Perplexity stories. One good, I guess, and one maybe not so good. One has more of a negative effect. So let's start with the bad. Perplexity, like a lot of these other AI providers, let's call them, because they don't necessarily make their own LLM, has been accused of basically plagiarism. You have both Forbes called out Perplexity and said they plagiarized one of its articles in the startup's beta Perplexity Pages feature. And then Wired also accused Perplexity of illicitly scraping scraping its website along with other sites. So it says the situation's complicated. I'm reading this off of TechCrunch, by the way. At its heart are the nuances surrounding the 2 concepts. The first is robots exclusion protocol. That's been a big part of the news. This robots.txt file, which is essentially what websites are putting in a simple way to say, stop, do not scrape. I'm oversimplifying that, but that's the idea. And what we've heard in the news quite a few times is like, hey, I have that on my site, yet me as the owner, whether it's Forbes or even a smaller site, I'm looking at what you're putting on Perplexity or maybe in an LLM, and it looks awful close to what I said, don't scrape. So this is happening again and again. We just had, I think it was Mustafa Suleyman was just out with Microsoft, and he was basically saying, hey, it's sort of fair game. If it was on the web, if you threw it up on the web in 96, that's on you. It's fair game. We're allowed to scrape it, which, caused a lot of rifts as well. So anyway, that's the negative side. We can pause there. Do you guys have any extra feedback on that, or sort of Perplexity's in the weird in between, right? Because they're not necessarily, they are creating their own language model, but their CEO has been open to say that's not really what we're about. We're just 1,000% about providing a great end user experience. So if they're using these other LLMs and it's drawing back into their search, who is ultimately responsible? Perplexity because it showed up on their site? Or is it, no, it's Claude, or I guess it wouldn't be necessarily Claude, but let's say 4.0 because it scraped it and we were just providing the information back to you guys.
Well, so the problem here, though, in my mind, is Perplexity, unlike the others, provides a citation for everything that it represents as a response. So that's just like web search. That's not taking content and regenerating it, with the LLM. So I don't understand exactly what is happening here with Perplexity, because Perplexity is this combination of a web crawler and its own web index paired with an LLM. Okay, and you can choose which LLM you want to do to generate the natural language, summarization of it. But it's simultaneously listing every place that it found on the web used as a source before generating it. So I'm confused by this claim that be something weird.
I was going to add a little bit more context to that, but Jimmy, go ahead, and then I can read a little bit more out of this TechCrunch article, which does answer some of that, Andy. But go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, okay. So what I was going to say was that number one, Andy, you're completely right. It has attribution. I think the root of the issue is the information is coming to the viewer, not through their site. That's the ultimate issue that they have. Like, oh, our traffic is just going to go to Perplexity because you can just get the salient information from there instead of having to go to our website, which is our ad generation revenue or our paywall or anything like that. And I think that's what it really comes down to. I mean, I kind of agree with Perplexity saying you put it in a public forum out there in public domain to be absorbed, then we're going to just rearrange where the information flows through. If they didn't give attribution, that might be an issue. If they didn't have literally a link to their website that someone could follow up with, it would be like saying, oh, hey, Wikipedia, your sources, you may have a sources section, right, for all of the information on your article, but, we don't like that, even though all the links to where you grabbed your article information from is there. So, I mean, I think that's just the biggest issue there is we have attribution and it's public information. So what is your problem?
Well, is it public information though? Because the robot exclusion protocol says don't. So and that's really where this, as I read more into it, that's really what they're getting after is saying, hey, we tested Perplexity. It should not be able to go and scrape this information or retrieve it. And the reason Google is okay is because Google adheres, we assume, to the robot exclusion protocol.
Well, that's the thing is that's an optional technology. That's not an enforced technology. Now, I don't know what the current legal framework is behind robots, because I know it's been in and out of legislative pieces of law for decades now. But the putting in a robot.txt and telling you not to web search, that's like the law that they created where it says, please don't track me, right? It's completely optional or voluntary from the device or the service that's going through that process. That is not a hardware enforced kind of technology. That's a pretty please don't do this. Not a you do not have the ability to do this. So the legal behind that the setup. What's that?
I'm glad Karl joined us because Karl early on was saying that he could use Perplexity to break through paywalls. So that is, you can get the data even when it's behind a paywall. And that shouldn't happen, right? I mean, if it's not publicly available. So Perplexity was doing something. Karl, elaborate on what you were able to do with Perplexity.
Or don't, because it's really good. I'm just saying.
All I'm saying is you do what you want to do. Whatever you do it. So
the Daily AI Show does not necessarily share the beliefs or information.
This is coming from them.
I love it.
I do remember way back when even ChatGPT, when you got ChatGPT 4, when it was able to search online, it was able to actually go through the paywalls, but now you can't. So for example, a site that we all love is The Information. And that is a very, very steep price.
It's expensive. It's
about $1,000
I don't a year, right? So.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for a news site. I subscribe to The Athletic, but even that's not like, but it does provide some breaking news. But all you need to do is like it's either on your desktop, hit the summarize, and put whether you're on the information page with the with any type of gated content, or just to put in the link. Now, mind you, a lot of the sites still had the was it the JavaScript, where they had the JavaScript over top of the content, and you just, you hit the inspect, you turn off the JavaScript, and then away you go. You got the content. So I'm not sure what it's doing, but it doesn't matter because I'm not actually reading the article. I just need you to give me the key points of the article. Once I get that, I don't need to read the rest. Obviously, that would be the point of you having the subscription to get the latest news. Not to justify it, but if you think about all the content that usually I want to get, you could probably find it from another source that's free. Most likely. It isn't exclusive to that one news source. You'll probably find it, and most likely you'll find it on X. You get the gist. But because they broke it, and I don't want to wait an extra hour or two, I'll just do that, and here's the 15 key points. Good. Okay.
And I'll keep this short. I'll keep this soapbox short. But if Perplexity can look at a web address and gather information from it, guess what? That's publicly available. All right. If you don't want your information publicly available, it needs to be locked off or hidden or an account access. I don't agree with paywall as a method. Please change that. All right, done with my soapbox. Moving on.
I know we got to move on. I only want to add this because this is directly from Perplexity's head of business. And I think this is an interesting nuance of this whole conversation because I definitely see both sides. I could play devil's advocate on either side of this. Okay, what he's saying is like, look, Perplexity isn't crawling. What we're doing is we're just summarizing a URL, and that's not the same thing as crawling. He says crawling is when you're just going around sucking up information, adding it to your index. He noted that Perplexity's IP might show up as a visitor to a website that is, quote, otherwise kind of prohibited from robots.txt, only when a user puts the URL in the query, which doesn't meet the definition of crawling. We're just responding to a direct and specific user request to go to that URL. In other words, if a user manually provides a URL to AI, Perplexity says its AI isn't acting as a web crawler, but rather just a tool to assist the user in retrieving and processing information. But this is the key. This is the other side of it. But to Wired and many other publications, that distinction without a difference because visiting a URL and pulling the information from it to summarize the text sure looks a whole lot like scraping if it's done thousands of times a day. It's a good point. You know, if Perplexity is like, dude, if you went to this website, you get the same thing. We're just trying to help you understand and research and use that information in a more efficient way. And then you go, that's not web scraping. And then the publications go, yeah, but you hit our website 1,000 times every 10 minutes. How is a human couldn't do that? This is now web scraping.
I think but that argument would now go all the way probably to the Supreme Court and for every single AI, right? Because like Suno, Udio is getting sued for the same kind of this in the same realm. Where like, well, a human can't do that, but like an AI can listen to, or get the data thousands times faster than a human. That you'll eventually reach to that conclusion, or right, like so. Especially with Perplexity launching Perplexity, the complex reasoning, and being able to get an even like a more answer your answers a little bit more complex.
Also, this is not an AI question. The 1,000 times per second, that's a mechanical issue.
Right. That's an automation.
You don't need AI to do that. You can just program that to happen.
Correct, and that would be the
I did say at the very top here, it was right before you came on, Karl, that I had two Perplexity stories. We just talked about this side. The other one is they announced an upgrade to their Pro Search, and because of time, I'm not going to get into this much, but they now introduced the next evolution of Pro Search, multi-step reasoning, advanced math and programming capabilities, quick search versus Pro Search. So it says, who can access Pro Search? Everyone can use Pro Search 5 times every 4 hours for free. Okay, you can use it Pro Search 5 times every 4 hours for free. For those who need more, Perplexity Pro subscribers get nearly unlimited daily access. So they just came out. This was just announced today, like this morning. So, or maybe yesterday. Sorry, this is June. Nope, it was yesterday. So, yeah, Perplexity is increasing their abilities and what they do. And they have a nice little logo here. You can go to perplexity.ai to learn more about their new features in Pro Search. So just want to bring that up as well. So
I want to remind everybody that, the Perplexity tool is extraordinary. And so resolving these issues is really important. I have a pro account. Thank you to Rabbit. Rabbit got me the pro account for free. So now that I'm suggesting you go out and buy one of these paper,
How long of a subscription did it
year.
with? Like a year. Okay, it's normally like $20 a month.
Yeah, basically making
no.
a rabbit free.
Yeah, exactly. If you pay 12 months for Perplexity, that's you save $20.
Honestly, that's a good deal. It's honestly a good deal when you look at it that way. Because Perplexity alone is worth it for the pro, and if you got a Rabbit one for it as part of that deal, I mean, you might have come out ahead there, Andy. I'm not sure.
I'm trying to justify it.
Yeah,
I know that'd be a great way to offload the Rabbit hardware, right? It's just buy Perplexity and you get the Rabbit for free, right? Isn't that what you just said, Brian? Yeah.
I mean, it depends on how many they're sitting on right now. And that part I don't know. How many rabbits are sitting in a warehouse right now? I don't know on that one. Yeah, it says rabbit justification. Love it, Andy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And Cisco is talking about what does copyright really mean in the era of AI. That is being litigated everywhere, and all kinds of things are asking for comment. I think we won't know, right? We have some ideas, but we won't know really where the balls land. And Justin suggests, if you're really interested in Perplexity, to go watch Lex Friedman's interview. And Brian was just talking about that behind the scenes with us. So yes, thanks.
That's a very good it's long. It's like 3 hours long, as they typically are, but especially the second half. If you haven't gone to listen to it yet, Justin, I don't know, did you say it was fascinating? Okay, you already listened to it, Justin. I don't know, Justin, you can put it in the comments, but I found the second half to be like, not that the first half was bad, but it really seemed to ramp up for me. And I really love that the CEO really had no qualms about breaking down sort of the thought process and the reasoning behind how Perplexity works. He also was very forthcoming with where they started from, which was essentially a Twitter scraper bot, essentially, and how they got their first level, like their basic early first investor, and how they were able to use that to get closer to what they felt like the end user would ultimately want. And so it was a great interview, because it was great to listen to somebody who was like, yeah, I'm not saying we nailed this on day one, not even close. We pivoted, then we pivoted some more. That enabled us to get a little more investing money, which then enabled us to do that. Ultimately, we decided we wanted to attack an area that Google wasn't going to go after, this section of searching and research knowledge, and providing end users better research. So yeah, Justin, I'm glad you went. He's saying, the second half really got into it. Not really news, but I agree, Justin. Go check out that Lex Friedman podcast with the CEO of Perplexity. It's maybe 2-3 episodes back now at this point, so it should be super easy to find.
So I got a couple of media stories, which should be really quick. Meta came out with a text to 3D generator. Mm-hmm. So what makes this a little different is it's actually generating the entire 3D object, right? And it's not taking it from an existing image and just wrapping it around, the perceived space or anything like that. But what it's actually doing is it's building the mesh, right? The framework, the shape, and then doing the texture, right? So applying a texture on it. That means you could be real iterative with it. So you can apply, all kinds of different textures to it. You have this model as a 3D asset. And so that should enable you to just quickly iterate and get them into creating whatever for your environments, whether it be in a 3D landscape or for video games or for anything along those lines. So I thought that was super exciting. It's basically the culmination of a 3-part system that Meta's been working on for their existing work in the space, and finally coming out with a text to 3D generator. What's really nice is it does it in like a minute. So,
and I still think, Jimmy, this is going to be a huge boon for like the 3D printing industry. I keep saying, like, for so long, there's been companies that need individual things. Maybe they're going to a conference or whatever, but they want something unique, something that's different, that somebody's going to go to that booth and be like, I've never seen this before. And it's because it's quite literally never been created. And I think we're going to see these companies have some really innovative ideas and innovative shapes, and these it's going to be an all-in-one system, right? These 3D printing companies with designers are going to be able to use something like this in the near future, create it, show it to the company, say, hey, is this what you're looking for? They can do a 360 spin in full color, and then be like, okay, minimum print order is like, we'll print 100 of these or whatever the case is, right? And this is the cost. And then somebody has something like that to go to a trade show or just be different. It's not a pen, whatever, So anyway, I just think this is super cool. And I cannot wait to see what people who
exactly. I want to see the workflow that's from here, create this thing to output on my 3D printer at home.
I think it's going to be like t-shirt printing.
I want to be able to just print it out right there. Yeah. So I think that'll be super huge and super fun. So that's kind of where what excited me about that story. Now, the other one is probably old news to us already, but still within the week release, is Runway came out with their Gen 3 Alpha, right? So we've all been hearing about Sora. We've heard about was it Kling coming out from China and things like that. Not terribly easy to get your hands on. If you got a Runway account, you have access to Gen 3 Alpha now. They released it to everybody who's got an account. So I know over this next week, I will be testing out lots of prompts to see what the output is. Maybe we can get a quick little narrative going on. So that was super huge for me. And then finally, I'll close off with Apple making a huge departure from their normal methodology of releasing information and releasing their 4M model specification, right? This is all about how to build models. And so this is this massively multimodal, as they're calling it. And this, what they did is they released this as a public demo on Hugging Face, right? Mm-hmm. Apple usually keeps everything, really close to the vest and, releases it into their environment as they've developed it and it reaches a certain level. And I'm hoping the reason why they're doing this is so that more models and more development happens using this framework to build newer models. This should give, down the line, this should potentially give Siri more methods in which to interact with whatever you're looking at on your devices or whatnot on multiple levels. The public demo has depth maps, and they have contextual identifiers. They have boxing rules where they can identify objects and do all those kinds of things. So this is super exciting in the terms of further models and kind of identifying Apple as the next AI stock. Apparently, their stock price went up 24% since May. Yeah. So now when you talk about frontier models, you can add Apple to the discussion. Meta and Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, and now Apple.
Yeah, absolutely. And as Brian posted in the chat, we will be talking more about Runway a week from Friday. So that'll be our tool review.
Definitely.
So speaking of big companies announcing things, Google's had a couple different announcements lately. They increased the Gemini 1.5 model, which had a 1 million context window to 2 million context, and that's publicly available if you go to their backend AI studio, which lets you use the API through an interface. They also came out with their Gemma 2 model, and it's in the lightweight AI model series, and it is beating the other models on the various score things. Gemma 2 is more efficient, so it makes it more accessible and more cost effective, right? Again, this is in the trend of models getting better and cheaper and smaller, right? So those things are happening. The other thing that they announced is that they added 110 new languages to Google Translate, which Google Translate now covers, I believe the stat is 8% of the world's languages. I thought that was small. I thought that was an interesting stat, but part of this 110 is including languages that are being lost. So they're not spoken, right? So it's part of an effort to retain knowledge of languages and how languages are spoken, not just translated in text, so that those languages can still continue. And those are my Google stories.
I have another Google's really showing up in all of the newsletters today because they are doubling the power consumption of their data centers. And this is an issue with respect to global climate change and our attempts to reverse that, because now AI is driving a huge level of carbon emissions. And so Google was getting credit for, contributing to this problem by, adding more data centers that are very expensive in carbon production. Anyway, this is all ultimately going to be solved by AI as it designs new chips and new methodologies for doing much more efficient processing of AI. That's my prediction.
Absolutely. And I've got Google announced their Pixel 9 phone, which has a ton of AI features embedded in it. There's an Add Me in the photo app. So like you can add a photo, right? Like somebody wasn't there, but you want to be added to it. You can do those sorts of things. And there's Pixel Screenshots, which is kind of like Recall or Rewind, Microsoft and then the Apple thing, so that it will remember what you did, and it's basically taking screenshots on a regular basis so that it can remember those sorts of things. Now I think that's actually what I've got for Google. Thanks.
I have a quick one from 11 Labs, and that they are partnering now with states to use deceased actors and actresses and other notable people's voices. So there's a kind of a cool story here. I'm going to pull it back up. Where'd it go? Working with folks like Judy Garland's estate, Burt Reynolds. So you can listen now to Judy Garland do the voice or do the audiobook for
The Wizard of Oz.
Thank you. All I wanted to say was A Wonderful World, and I was like, that's not it. I didn't know. I was like, what is the most famous movie she was in? Anyway, you got that was a major brain fart there. Thank you for saving me. The Wizard of Oz. So you can listen to Julie Garland. There's some quotes there talking about the people who, descendants of the estates that are running like Julie Garland. They say, look, we're thrilled that people are going to be able to listen to, I think it was like her mother's or grandmother's voice, reading The Wizard of Oz to new generations and stuff like that. So we kind of knew this was coming, but this is like maybe one of the first times I've seen where, things are being done sort of the right way, which is, hey, go talk to the estates, figure out what they want to do. We've seen this a little bit in music with, Tupac's estate and other things like that. But this is the first time I've seen where there's been like a partnership now. And the way that you're able to access this is you can go to 11labs.io. And this is actually their reader app. So it's something you'll download on your phone. On their website, it says you can join the Android app waitlist, but it says you can download the iOS app right now. So I would have to go and dig into this to find out whether this is free or not, or what you're able to listen to. Oh, it says 3 months free. So get 3 months free access with near unlimited generation and the highest quality voices. So I guess it's built into that as well. I didn't read the whole thing, but pretty cool. I don't know. I mean, let's be honest. I want to hear Burt Reynolds narrate like Smokey and the Bandit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of books I want to hear Burt Reynolds read.
Well, this also got me thinking what the next stage would be, because they specifically pointed out Julie Garland and The Wizard of Oz. But could we now see different interpretations of the text? Like,
oh wow,
I would love to hear Julie Garland as Dorothy telling me about her experience from a first-person point of view of the Wizard of Oz. Like, since you have the source material, AI can interpret it and then just rewrite it for that point of view, listening to Dorothy telling me about her experience. Yeah. You know, I think that would be a fantastic way to get re-immersed into those classics as well. And so now you'll have all these alternate versions and things like that. So that's what popped into my mind. I was like, oh man, that means we could listen to it all different kinds of ways. Yeah. You know?
I downloaded the 11 Labs app, the iOS app yesterday.
Same.
To see if I could get it to read something. And the UI on the iOS app seemed to require that I upload a file or otherwise get the text that I wanted it to read. So it wasn't as I thought when I saw the offer that it was going to be able to read anything that is on my screen, and I would just say, "Hey, 11 Labs," or something, and that's not the way it works. But you can see where it's all going.
Absolutely. I want Judy Garland to read Wicked to me as Dorothy. Like, I want to hear her experience in engaging with Elphaba while reading Elphaba's story. I think that would be really.
I have a related thing. Go ahead, Karl.
Well, no, I was just saying, you know, who you don't want reading to you? Yourself. Because I cloned my own voice and had it start reading all a bunch of stuff. And it's like, probably not. It's just a little too weird having myself read to myself all these any stories. Because I did upload a bunch of stuff, and I was like,
and that's working with my family all the time. I put in this show on the car, and I'm like, oh, look at this new podcast about RAG systems. This is probably going to be pretty good. And my daughter will be at the back. She'll be like, please no, please no, please no. And I'm
no, but if I'm reading like Harry Potter in my voice, and then the funny thing is, because like, so my wife reads sometimes had read Harry Potter to my daughter, and then used like voices, right? Like she'd raise her voice. Imagine doing that with your own voice, which would be kind of hilarious. But we probably want, hey, Stephen Fry, could you do this? Like, you know, can you read Jason Bourne novels? I'd love to hear Stephen Fry, just his take on Jason Bourne novels. Whatever, right?
Look, we talked about this a long time ago, and I told you I was firmly in the camp of deceased family members being able to read stories back. My mom is deceased. My dad is still around. I would pay well for my mom to be able to read stories to my daughter, and for my daughter to hear her voice and talk to her and stuff. And so I think we're seeing that a little bit. And like, okay, Burt Reynolds' estate. Okay, well, what about my estate? What about my mother? Perhaps she passed in 2008, so this wasn't a possibility. Maybe she had put in her will or something legal that says, I give access to my future AI generated voice only to my two sons, my husband, you know, whatever the case is. I entrust them to run my estate and do what they think is appropriate. And maybe there's these guardrails on it. And had she set that up beforehand, and we obviously had enough of her voice to clone, which unfortunately I don't think we do, you know, if I'm talking about my mom. But I am fully in this camp. I know we've talked about the weirdness of like, oh, I don't know if I want to hear my, you know, deceased mom's voice come across the echo in the kitchen. I get that. But I definitely look at this and I go, there's a lot of good that can come out of this, a lot of healing that can come out of this, I believe. So anyway, we can have another conversation about it. We did a show about that a long time ago, but maybe we'll bring it back.
I just want to point out, there's one thing that is very interesting that, you know, when you started the show with Perplexity and the issues that they came with, you know, the various media outlets, it's interesting that like something like OpenAI is signing all these, having signed all these licensing deals with all these publishers. And then from a lawsuit perspective, I think and the lawsuits in Udio and Suno it's not necessarily, hey, you know, you shouldn't train us. You shouldn't train on our data. It's like, no, you didn't give us a cut of the money that we could potentially make. Hence, we're going to sue you. most likely the outcome is you sign licensing deals with us. If anyone remembers all the way back to the Napster and all that issue, it wasn't you're stealing our music. No, it's like, hey, we need to make some money too. So let's all make some money. And how do we make that money? So I think it's probably smart where, all these AI tools, the big ones, can sign those deals with those artists, because a deal is coming with like Taylor Swift. A deal is coming. I don't know when that is, who that's going to sign with, but it's going to be damn big that Taylor Swift is going to sign with.
And she'll own it.
And
Whatever it is, she'll own it. Yeah.
Yeah. She'll get a cut, but it's going to be ridiculous. And one thing I do want to point out, and someone told me this, and I don't think, I'm not sure who here likes the band ABBA. I was like, what? So they were telling me they went to a show in London, and it wasn't ABBA. It was the band walking around, but it wasn't them. The band themselves were like, they went to a studio, put on the 3D suits, and then that concert is playing 2 times every day. So think about a Vegas show, but the actors aren't there. But they've signed that agreement with, I don't know who did it. But think of, it's like in Vegas, you're like, and apparently you couldn't tell. Like they look like as they looked, I don't know when they were big in the 80s, but whenever they were big, they looked exactly. So the joke was some dude who's in ABBA is probably mowing his lawn, making bank while like they're performing on stage, and it looks amazing, and they're all hugging, and the person told me the only thing that they could tell that it wasn't actually real was when the crowd was cheering, they were still talking. So obviously it was programmed, but everything else, movement, hugging. So it's like, hey, if you make those deals and we now see like the deal with the devil with Google, with all the media outlets, they can't really back out anymore. Sure, just some issues with certain, but if you make the deal now, there's a huge benefit in the future. And I think for all the artists, like, you better be wary about those deals that the AI companies make, because it's like, in a decade, you might be regretting it. But
So one of the things that Paul Reitzer started talking about way back, Paul Reitzer of the former marketing AI show and now the artificial intelligence show, was if these companies were smart, they would reach out to the schools, right? You would sponsor a journalism school, and then you would get like the content that they're writing during school or whatever it is. You would sponsor musician stuff, like go to Berkeley, right, and say like, yeah, no, I'm gonna fund this, and musicians going through this get a free ride because they're going to give us this content, right? Like, I'm fascinated that we're seeing stories that say everybody's suing everybody, but the companies that are training aren't like, why go where everybody else is being trained, right? Like you can contribute a massive amount of value to them for a very little bit of what your funding is, and then it's above board, right? Because they're training on everybody's music too, right? They're training how to write well as well.
Back on the subject of reanimating deceased and or non-present characters using AI. In the news, a company, Hedra Labs, now can take, and we've seen demonstrations of this using others, but it takes a static photo and creates out of it a dynamic talking video, bringing selfies to life with synchronized speech and facial animation. So you can imagine now being able to take your father's or your mother's, if your father and mother like mine are deceased, take just a single photo and then have AI animate that photo. Well, now give it 1,000 photos and then some voice recordings, and now you have the tools that you can deliver a representation to future generations of an individual who's no longer present. So I'm very interested in this, as we all know, and we have this sort of notional initiative called Life Chronicle, which is basically collecting the data necessary to generate this kind of interactive representation of you after your death.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely thought about this before that, we do this show 5 days a week. For the most part, I'm here most days and stuff like that. And it's not lost on me that this content could one day, in fact, be something that's of extreme value to my family members and stuff. Yes, it's public. Yes, it's out there. I suppose other people could use it for ways and reasons I would prefer. Obviously I wouldn't want for privacy and stuff like that. But, here we are. We're moving our faces and talking. And now I tend to lean to the left. I know this because when I go to make the shorts, my head is always off the side of the damn screen and I have to move it back. Like little things like that, like little things that are different about me or the way Andy moves and stuff. But that's all data. And whether we can specifically use it today, or like you're saying, Andy, and I've seen Microsoft put out research papers on this and stuff like that, where it is getting much, much more normal and natural looking with the way the head moves and the eyes move and the mouth moves. So, yeah, I don't know. Pretty cool. People have to decide for themselves, I guess, whether that's something they want to do with maybe deceased ones if they have the opportunity. I think it's an individual choice. But again, I'm sort of pro the ability, but I'm also pro-choice in that sense too, which is to say that nobody should be forced into that. I think it should be used where it's appropriate. And for a lot of people, I think there's going to be a lot of healing. And I think that's what I get the most excited about is the mental health side of it, and where I think it can do a lot of good. But people disagree with me, so that's fine too. But interesting topic nonetheless. Okay, we're kind of on time here. Any last ones we want to throw in there before we wrap it up? Friday we'll have our 2-week recap show, so we will definitely have more time to talk on these topics. But any we want to leave the audience with before we finish up today?
Quick one. Apple has been granted an observer role on OpenAI's nonprofit board alongside Microsoft's observer. So interesting confluence of forces there.
So one last story let me see if I can find it. Anthropic has created funding for a safety benchmark, right? Because there aren't agreements about a safety benchmark, and Anthropic is actually very concerned about safety. So it's proposing the benchmark, and it's coming out with that, so that we will have another. Right now, we're talking about how fast things are, how powerful they are. We have some sort of fudgy measure of reasoning, right? This is a good reasoning model. This is not a good reasoning model. Safety is not something that people measure in that kind of way, and Anthropic is coming out with the benchmark too.
Okay. We'll wrap it up there. Well, look, we have tons of AI topics coming up over the next few weeks, but tomorrow we will be talking, it's 4th of July here in the United States. And if you're listening to us from outside the country, you'd be like, great, it's the 4th of July. But that means it's Independence Day in the United States, which means it's a holiday. And we are going to be doing an American-themed a show for tomorrow. We will be live. And it's going to be about American AI companies that are probably flying under the radar right now. Hopefully if we're doing a good job tomorrow, it'll be quite a few companies you maybe never heard of. But people we can get excited about that maybe are just starting to get their Series A funding or whatever. So that'll be on tomorrow's show. Friday, we have our 2-week recap show. More of these topics will come back around, whatever we didn't necessarily get to. And I won't go through all of them, but over the next 2 weeks, we've got shows on Critic GPT, which came out from OpenAI. We're going to be talking about LangGraph from LangChain. We will be doing our show, as I mentioned, about runwayml's Gen 3. That'll be coming up next Friday. We are talking about Amazon, and we're going to be talking about their new chatbot. We'll be talking about more power. If you ever watched, Top Gear, one of the hosts is always like, I need more power. And so we'll be talking about what would it actually take? What do we need to do with power in order to do the things we want to do with AI in the future? We know that it's a massive power consumption. How are we going to solve that problem? So we'll talk about all the different ways that we think might be coming online, what's there today and all that. So they'll be coming up as well over the next 2 weeks. Lots of AI topics coming up. Appreciate all your guys' support. go check out thedailyishow.com. As I mentioned, top of the show, check out that newsletter, and we will be back tomorrow live to talk about those under the radar American companies. So until then, guys, have a great day.
Oh.